I'm going to run through these slides because I feel like the most learning happens in the Q&A. So while this is all the practical stuff on the slides, you can always go back and watch it on the video, and the Q&A is helpful. Is it helpful to look at the slides so that most of the questions are answered? Yeah, but it's hard to look at slides and it's much easier to talk face to face. So I'm going to try to reserve as much time as we can for that part. So what this is the third part of our dementia series where we talked first about what was dementia, then we talked about medications in dementia and diagnosing it, and then this is your dementia toolkit, what to do after diagnosis, like all of the intricacies that are involved with planning your life now that you have this literally life-changing diagnosis. And it sounds like, okay, what do I need to do? My doctors will tell me everything. And I promise you, as a physician, I didn't know a lot of this stuff. And it was through the past, oh, what have I been a doctor now for 17 or 18 years? It's over a decade and a half that I've learned this from dealing with my patients, from helping my patients find these resources, do this planning, mostly by doing the planning poorly. Because remember, it's the lessons that it's when we fail that we learn the most. So it's a lot of failures on my part and a lot of failures on my patients' parts to prepare that have allowed me to prepare this for you to prevent another family from going through what a lot of my patients' families have gone through. A little bit of my backstory is the reason I'm in geriatric medicine is because three of my grandparents, who are all born in, who are all buried in the Western Hemisphere, Canada and the United States, all died in hospitals and all died under situations where they had said their whole life, I don't want to die that way. And they died exactly the way they feared the most. And I wanted to make sure no other family went through that, especially not any Muslim families, because I continue to find that Muslim families are the most ill prepared. South Asian families also included that are non-Muslim, that are very, very ill prepared. And we have such beautiful rituals and resources and family traditions from our home continent. And we can bring some of that back here and we can mix East and West to make the most beautiful death be a testament to people's beautiful lives that they live here because my parents and grandparents sacrificed a lot to come over here, and I want to make sure that we honor them in the most vulnerable times of their lives, in the most vulnerable periods of their lives, which is older age, because these giants, for the first time, need some assistance. So that's why I'm here in this field, and I want to make sure that all of you have your toolkits stacked, ready, prepared, and you know what to do, and something to go back on to look at. But this is not by any means any financial or legal advice. I'm a medical doctor. This is outside of my scope. Um, so you're going to check with your state and federal laws in order to ensure that, whatever I do say, you find the relevant resources for your state. I'm going to do my very best to give you pointers to direct you in the right, or to steer you in the right direction to get started. But ultimately, you'll have to talk to financial and legal professionals, which is not me. Don't ever go to doctors for money advice. We are really bad with money, I promise. Any mention of any groups, organizations, or entities in this presentation today are not endorsements. I have no financial relationship with any of them. It was literally just how can I look up things to help you get started on your search for those resources that you're ultimately going to use in order to stock your toolkit. So, just as a quick review for those who did not attend the last two, what is dementia? It's a general term for memory loss, confusion, and difficulty with daily activities. All of us have memory loss. I lose my phone no less than 13 times a day. But when it starts interfering in my ability to carry out my regular activities, when it professional or personal, so I can't cook and I can't work because I'm a danger in the kitchen or I'm a danger to my patients, that is dementia when it's interfering in my daily activities. Dementia is actually not a normal part of aging. Not everybody has dementia, believe it or not. I have 105-year-olds whose memory is better than mine. But we do have some common types of dementia. We have Alzheimer's, we have vascular dementia, we have Lewy body dementia, we have frontotemporal lobe dementia. These are not the only dementias that are out there, but these are the most common ones that we see, at least in America. And we talked last time about how almost everybody has Alzheimer's disease by the age of 65, but depending on what genetic predisposition you have, some people will exhibit it earlier than others. But I'm not here to review our last two presentations. I'm here to say we need to know what to do about it once we get the diagnosis. So the first step is to take a deep breath and relax. And for those who are Muslim, remember the verses from the chapter Yasin 38 and 39. The sun travels for its fixed term. This is the design of the Almighty, All Knowing. And as for the moon is really big for Muslims. You guys know, like, it's a lunar calendar. Most of you know it's a lunar calendar. The moon changes. And this verse in particular is really important for two reasons. As for the moon, we have ordained precise phases for it until it ends up looking like an old curved palm stalk. Now, in studying these two verses, I remember already being a doctor and being in the process of becoming a geriatrician. And it was explained to me that, like, the moon kind of, goes from like full to, like, the half and stuff to a crescent.
Hello.
And the crescent shape, are you trying to reach me at all from Olive? No. I'm going to mute that on entry. These verses were explained to me was the phases of the moon. You go from like a full moon to the half, the quarter, and then you get to the crescent. And the crescent is kind of shaped like a date palm. And I know in California you guys have date palms. We have date palms in Arizona. And as the tree gets old, it also makes a crescent shape. And this is kind of a parable for the human being, which starts as a seed, it grows tall. The date palm is like this tall, formidable tree, but like the moon, like the sun, it's got its fixed time. So it's going to curve and it's going to bend, which is a huge ego blow to those of us humans who are so proud that we're able to accomplish so much and do so much and be so strong and be so young and be so good looking, whatever, whatever, whatever. But we are all destined to change and we are all destined to bend. This is the way we were created. And we were created perfectly in this way to do this. So, this is the promise from God that this is going to happen. So, when you get a devastating diagnosis of any kind, especially dementia, maybe let's take the word devastating out of it. Yes, it's life changing, but it doesn't have to be devastating because guess what? For a lot of people, for a lot of Olivers, it's already been promised to them. They already know, and some people are just better at handling bad news than others. So, this is my attempt at letting you handle this bad news with a little bit of, okay, well, this was coming. Like, I saw this coming. And so this is a very popular chapter for those who are not familiar with Islam. This is a very popular chapter for Muslims, especially. Like, most of them know a lot of this chapter, like, from by heart. And these particular verses get glanced over. I know I did not pay attention to them until it was explained to me like this. And as a geriatrician, these two verses are very near and dear to my heart, even though I always hated learning the phases of the moon. I had this mental block. And then when I did this, I was like, oh, I can do this now. So, getting into our dementia toolkit, besides that step one of breathing, these are like steps two, three, four, five, six, seven, 2 through 7. So, we're going to talk about what medical tools you're going to have in your toolkit, what financial, legal, emotional, mental tools, and what palliative or end of life tools you're going to have in this tool case so that you're ready to go once you get diagnosed with dementia. So your medical step, which is step 2, you're going to confirm the diagnosis. So just because your doctor says you have dementia, they probably did an in-office test. They don't know for sure. For us, tissue is diagnosis. So without tissue, we don't know. So literally without a brain biopsy, we don't know, but we are not in the practice of taking brain biopsies on live people. We can only find out post-mortem. All right. But there's stuff that we can do. We can involve some specialists if we think in the office that the likelihood that you have dementia is pretty high based on whatever clinical history you came with and based on this initial testing that we did. But let's send you to a neurologist, let's send you to a geriatrician or to a memory clinic that literally all they do all day long is confirm diagnoses of dementia. And they try to figure out, tease out what kind it is, because that's going to determine what treatment, what additional testing we're going to do, what treatments we're going to try. This includes neuropsychological testing. Most of these memory centers will have very comprehensive neuropsychological testing. It could take like 3 to 5 hours to complete a session of this testing. Very exhaustive because they're trying to figure out exactly which center it's coming from. Again, that determines what treatments we're going to offer. So there's going to be baseline labs, there's going to be baseline imaging. It includes MRIs if we can do them on you, CTs, PET scans to see where is sugar being taken up in the brain in a PET scan, because that tells us that's a more active center versus the centers that aren't taking up sugar, aren't metabolically active, because that means something's wrong there because the brain uses a lot of sugar. This is not an endorsement for sugar. It's just how your body uses carbohydrates, okay? And then obviously looking at medications. Why is all of this necessary? A lot of times it's an actual abnormality that's reversible. Your thyroid, your adrenal glands, your medications could be causing some brain fog. So once we take those out and then retest you, there's a high likelihood you're going to test normal again because there's so much stuff that we put into our bodies, both over the counter and prescription. And God knows what we're inhaling every day when we go outside, especially y'all in LA traffic. There are probably reversible causes there, and dementia, certain types of dementia are not actually dementia. They're called pseudo dementia, fake dementia, because there's something masking, there's something metabolic going on, and it's looking like dementia. And in an ageist society like America, or in any ageist society, we are very quick to write off old people and say, oh, they have rapidly progressive dementia, they have dementia. No, nobody just gets it. There's always a reason. So that's why this testing is important. So if you get a diagnosis, please don't be those stubborn patients who refuse to go back to the doctor because all they give me is bad news all the time. No, they need to confirm this for you because it's in your best interest to do that. And then ongoing care plan means ongoing care. So you don't just go to the doctor once or twice to confirm, to get the initial and then to confirm and then stop going. You also need to go regularly because what we want to do is regularly repeat the same testing, especially the cognitive testing where we're trying to test your memory and test your thought processes to see has it changed year to year? Is it changing? And sometimes, depending on if you enroll in a study or based on the memory clinic that you go to, they might want to do PET scans every year, every 2 years to see what's changing in your brain. Is there something new that's popping up, or it's getting worse, or it's not going to get better. It's usually getting worse if they've already confirmed the type of dementia. And that is information and data you can use to help you plan. It's like, oh, if I was going to go to Hajj, or if I was going to go on this, like, lifelong pilgrimage I wanted to go on, or trip, dream trip, or something, or I wanted to spend my money in this way or not spend my money in this way and do this big thing, build a hospital, whatever it is. I know I have limited time now. So you would want this data in order to fulfill all of those, your bucket list stuff and get all of that done. And again, figure out what available treatments there are. Are there any trials studying this particular change that's happening? Are there any changes that I can make in my lifestyle? Do I need to do more yoga? You just had a wonderful session before me. Is there anything else I can maximize in my diet or my exercise plan in order to prevent this from getting worse next year? So, questions to ask your doctor: what type of dementia do they suspect? What stage is the disease? Some dementias do have stages, and so they can tell you what stage you're at. Again, this is good for planning purposes. What medications or therapies are available? What will my symptoms look like? Like from now to the next time I see you, what can I expect to change, or what new symptoms might present? What lifestyle changes can I do to maintain the level that I'm at? And when should I seek emergency help? These are among the questions you should ask people like me, which I can speak to. Now, all of the rest of the stuff is outside of my scope. So, this is where we're going to start talking to our financial and legal professionals. But part of what medical doctors do have to do is ask, who is your medical power of attorney? And we do this when you are perfectly coherent and perfectly able to tell us what you want, because that's when the information is the most accurate and true reflection of what you believe, what you want, what you desire. So, why is a medical power of attorney designation so important when, yeah, I have dementia, but it doesn't mean I can't make my own decisions? Absolutely, I can. There is a point when I won't be able to, though. So, at some point, dementia literally, physically, scientifically prevents a person from making rational decisions because their judgment and their insight sections, which is the front of their brain, is compromised. This is a disease process. This is not a judgment on the patient saying that they're not smart, they're not educated, they're not highly qualified, they haven't achieved a million great things. You could have been president of the United States, and y'all have seen presidents of the United States with dementia. So it is not a reflection on intellect or status or any kind of judgment on the person. This is literally the way God said in those verses that he made us to eventually curve and not be able to stand up straight or to think straight. Um, and you can't outwill science. Like, as much as some people will make you try to believe that you can pray away science, you can't do that. It was also created by a higher being. So At some point, dementia will not allow you to make rational cognitive decisions anymore, and that's called competency. You're no longer competent. It's a bad word. I don't like the word. I don't like saying they're medically incompetent to make their own medical decisions. But unfortunately, that is the legal speak we currently have, and that is the way I currently have to certify people and say they are not medically competent to make medical or financial decisions anymore. At some point, some dementia patients will not speak. And so, on top of not being able to, remember what your needs and wants and desires are, you can't communicate them anymore. So, that's why medical power of attorney is important. Now, I don't know as a doctor, and people don't know as people, like when these two, number one and number two, are going to happen. We don't know when we're going to lose the competency to make our own medical financial decisions. And we don't know if from this second to the next second, we will continue to be able to communicate them. Strokes happen, accidents happen, things fall down on our heads, we can fall on our faces. That can change literally in an instant. Everybody here knows somebody that that's happened to. That's why while you have your wits about you, while you have everything is normal and good and you're healthy and you're awesome, assign a medical power of attorney. All right. This is someone that knows you and knows, first of all, they're willing and able to speak on your behalf for any medical legal decisions. They don't have to be family. Legally in America, it does not have to be family. However, if you don't assign somebody, your state will assign people based on whatever their rules and regulations are. In Arizona, where I live, the next person, if a power of attorney is not assigned, it will be their spouse. If it's not their spouse, it will be their children. And if they have multiple children, this becomes a problem. And we can talk about why that becomes a problem. Um, but very commonly, medical powers of attorney can and do choose the opposite of what the patient wanted in their lifetime. And it is perfectly legal for them to do exactly the opposite of what the affected person, the patient, wanted in their lifetime. This is why it's really important to choose your medical power of attorney wisely and discuss your wishes with them very clearly while you still are able to do that and not wait for an emergency. Step four, your financial tools that you're going to have. This is kind of like a 5 step that I milled it down into and or filtered it down into. You're going to identify your current expenses and your projected expenses. Like your if you have a house payment or car payment or how are you living? How are you moving around? How are you paying for your food? How are you paying for your medications? And will you continue to be able to do so 10, 12, 20 years down the road? Because the life expectancy for people with dementia is now up to 20 years after diagnosis. So if they play all their cards right and they, do their lifestyle modifications, definitely if they already were, healthier people and now they have dementia diagnosis, they might even live longer than 20 years. So do I have 20 years worth of finances, 20 years or more? And then what part of my expenses will my insurance cover, my medical insurance or my long-term care insurance? What are my Medicare benefits? Would I qualify for Medicaid? And I think in California it's called CalAid. I'm not sure. And then if I'm a vet, do I have any VA benefits that will help me cover any of these costs? It's a good idea to meet with a financial planner who understands elder care and then consolidate accounts and simplify bills. This is important because if you have dementia, the likelihood they're going to forget a payment and something gets repossessed or something gets foreclosed is very high. We see it all the time. We see people getting evicted all the time. So it's a nice idea to automate things. However, the catch-22 is they automate things and then they forgot and then they died. Now, how do you de-automate things to save whatever assets they have? So people with no family or are single or people that are newer to Islam or, your faith community, we've got to figure out how to especially catch that very vulnerable population that have no blood relatives. Like we've got to protect them medically and financially and make sure, we can do that. However, a lot of people are very private about these things. So it's hard as communities to support them, especially because people are very proud and dignified, and we want to maintain that for them. But at the same time, we don't want them to get exploited or hurt in any way. And then assign a trusted person as financial power of attorney. So you don't just have a medical power of attorney, you can have a financial power of attorney who's a completely different person. Sometimes it could be the same person, but you also, again, want to designate that person very clearly while you're able to choose who it is and not succumb to the state deciding who it is. If you don't have, I just talked about single people, if you don't have anybody assigned as a financial power of attorney, a lot of your state that you live probate, whereby it's basically reabsorbed by the state. Nobody gets it. So if you wanted to, give charitably, I have a couple of asterisks over there. I'll talk about all of those little symbols that you see. If you want, you did the state, all that is going to go into probate, and your dream is not going to. Asterisk that I have is for looking up long-term care insurance. A good place to go look for long-term care insurances. I think there are 7 or 10 plans right now in the United States that are competitive. If you're here, understand elder care listed financial relationship with, but they also do like estate planning. They may direct you to like wills. You can make wills online, but for some people, it's really important to make like a Sharia-based will, which is like an Islamic will. And so, again, you can find people in your masjid that can help you do that. Or refer you to lawyers and stuff that can do that. Yes, there's a cost associated with that. I hate to break it to you, but people don't work for free. So you might have to pay out of pocket, but that means your $1 million or $100,000 or $10, whatever it is that you have saved up, is going to do what you wanted to do after you are gone. So you will have to pay somebody at some point, to make all of this happen. Please don't expect people to work for free. They're not going to do it. That's not fair. You wouldn't do it. And then assigning a person as your financial power of attorney, that has 2 little carrots over there. The reason is because that will depend on state to state how you assign it. So the best place to check for that is your state attorney general's office, and they will have forms to assign a financial power of attorney. If you don't do it and you're a single person, the state will assign you a financial power of attorney, and that financial power of attorney is going to make decisions on what happens to your money, what they're willing to pay for, what they're not willing to pay for when you are no longer able to make medical or financial decisions for yourself. Um, Step 5 is going to be legal, and what legal planning or tools you're going to put into your toolbox. So if you don't have one, you're going to write a will. For Muslims, I found out that up to 80% of Muslims do not have a will, and I was always taught we are not allowed to sleep 3 nights without a will. Please get your wills done. And if you want to do a trust, you do the trust. And if you want to know the difference between the two, you're going to ask a legal professional and not the doctor. You're going to assign your power of attorneys for healthcare and finances, whether it's the same person or different people. You're going to draft your advanced directives and or living wills to align with how you want to die. And advanced directives and living wills. I'm sorry, I should have, that's what I was looking for. I wanted to put a little asterisk by that. You can look up 5 Wishes. It's a free printable packet. I believe it is legal in a lot of states, something like 30 states, but other states do have very particular forms they want you to fill out. And I think you can get those off of your Department of Health and Human Services, your state Department of Health and Human Services. You can also pay a lawyer to do them. But if you do 5 Wishes, it's free. And you can print that online. And again, 30 states recognize that. As long as it's witnessed and signed, you're fine. But some states do require this to be notarized, both your healthcare financial powers of attorney and your advanced directives living wills. So it's state to state dependent. So that's why you're going to check your state's Health and Human Services Department, or you're going to go to 5 Wishes. Just Google that, and it'll be a free downloadable printable packet. Next, discuss guardianship and or conservatorship as a last resort if capacity is lost. Okay, so capacity and competency are different. I believe we talked about this on our second dementia talk. Capacity is when you may be competent, but you no longer are Like if I said, "Would you yell fire in a movie theater?" They might say yeah, because they thought it was funny. That's not appropriate thinking, okay? It's also a punishable offense. But some people are mentally compromised in addition to being cognitively compromised. And it's unfortunate, but they may need involuntary admission into a psychiatric unit because they're not just making poor decisions. Um, they're no longer, it's not just that they're not competent to make decisions, they're also making very poor decisions or dangerous decisions. And so that's usually associated with psychiatric diagnoses. And we need to have somebody who's able to do that. And guess what? The medical power of attorney cannot go to a psychiatric hospital and say, you need to send the police to this person because they're not safe and they need to go in and see a psychiatrist. Powers of attorney definitely don't have that and don't have that right. And financial powers of attorney don't have that right. They for sure don't because they're just financial. They don't work with medical or mental health. For mental health guardianship or conservatorship of people with psychiatric diagnoses, you need to have somebody assigned. When you're doing the medical power of attorney, you can make it a medical power of attorney as well as a medical guardian or mental health guardian or a mental health conservator. What you're called depends again state to state, and you can go to your state attorney general's office to figure out which of these forms I need to figure out, especially if I'm diagnosed with dementia and I already know that I have a history of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. I better get that lined up now so my family has a legal ability to admit me against my will in a hospital because maybe I'm not going to be rational. I'm going to say, no, I don't need it. And that happens all the time. It was meant to make sure that people did not just say, my dad's crazy, my sister's crazy, my wife's crazy, stick her in the quote unquote loony bin, which is what happened a lot. And it's for the patient's protection and freedom and civil liberties that this happened. However, now it's to the point where it's actually a real impediment and people will often end up dead just because the legal blockades that are there to protect them also block our ability to help them get the assistance that they need for mental health resources in a mental health crisis or emergency. Store the documents in an accessible but secure location. My recommendation is a copy in your safe deposit bank, a copy with every single one of your children, definitely like signed, sealed, like envelopes, manila envelopes to your medical power of attorney, to your financial power of attorney, to your mental health guardian. Everybody has those. Maybe a neighbor would be useful. And any time you go to the hospital, that folder of papers goes with you because the hospital will ask you, what's your advance directive? Who's your medical power of attorney? If you lose the ability to speak or communicate or talk to us, who's going to speak for you? They want to know those questions every time you go to the hospital. Have it and take an extra copy for them to keep because I promise you they're going to lose it. And when they most need it, they're not going to have it. So always take it with you. Make sure that the people who are in the house or who are going to take you to the doctor or the hospital emergency room, they take that paperwork with you because that is notorious for getting lost, and hospitals don't keep those records, even though they say they do. Questions to ask the lawyer. I kind of put the financial and legal questions together. Very important for a lot of people is how do I minimize my taxes? This is really important because you don't want your estate upon, after you die to then be taxed so formidably that there's really nothing left to give to the people you want to have all of your assets. How do you protect those long-term care assets? How do you protect those assets, especially if you need long-term care? So we
What
did talk about some of the
is a
costs
stupid mouse?
associated with
How do I just do that?
we did talk about, what are some of the costs associated with long-term care or taking care of patients with dementia. And if you hire private caregivers, I mean, in Arizona, it starts at $25 an hour. So I'm sure California is at least 30 to 60% more expensive than that. If you're looking at private caregiving, if you're looking at assisted livings in Arizona, they're about $4,000 a month for room and board and care. And that just keeps escalating depending on all the bells and whistles that you need. If you need blood sugar checks, if you need frequent labs, if you need turning, if you need wound care, all of those things add up. So, do I have enough money to, if I'm going to live 20, 30 years with dementia, do I have enough money to live in my home? Or if I need higher care, can I Can I afford higher level of care, more expensive care, and for how long? And asking the lawyer and asking your financial advisor are going to be really important parts of that. What documents need to be updated? If I already have some documents, which ones need to be updated? Which ones don't I have? Like medical conservatorship or mental health guardianship conservatorship, most people don't have and think they don't need it. But sadly, even if we've never had a mental health diagnosis, when dementia gets to a certain stage, we might have some psychosis. We've talked about behaviors with dementia that can happen. So I think a mental health guardianship or conservatorship is paperwork that we should all invest in now. How do I want to distribute my wealth in my lifetime and after I die? And how do I make sure that the most I can give is given? What legacy am I leaving? And then how do I make sure that my medical and financial desires are executed? And a large part of this is choosing the right medical power of attorney and choosing the right financial power of attorney. However, knowing that if I chose the wrong ones, they are legally within their rights to do the exact opposite of what I say or to do what I completely don't want. So this is why it's really, really important to pick people that you trust and people that know what you want and aren't just guessing and shooting in the dark. Step 6, your mental and emotional tools for your toolkit for the person who's diagnosed with dementia. Go to support groups. Please go to support groups. The biggest one that we have in America is the Alzheimer's Association, but you don't have to have Alzheimer's dementia in order to go there. And they're kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, where they have meetings like all the time, all over the place. In fact, Oliver's can be a place and an organization that hosts them. So they come out and they give you presentations, they give you activities to do together to learn more about dementia, how to support people with dementia. That's really important. The person with dementia should absolutely go to counseling and continue to stay socially active, like you guys are doing so wonderfully over at Olive. There's also day centers, adult day centers where you can go volunteer, do whatever you can, because dementia doesn't mean now you stop driving, now you stop living, just, sit in a fetal position in a corner and wait to die. No, you can still be active and, engaged. And the more you do that, the longer your disease will take to progress. You're actually going to slow it down the more active you keep your body and your mind. And social engagement is really, really huge. This is why we see a lot of dementia in people who were like historically kind of loners. And they just were not able to make those neurons connect in their lifetimes because that's what social engagement does for us and human touch does for us. And they didn't like it. And so now they're kind of like, totally isolated and their disease we see progresses a lot faster. Maintain routines. That's really important also for delaying or extending the prognosis of any kind of dementia. Routines are very, very helpful. They keep you on track. They also are some things that you can control because most of dementia is not controllable. Engage in hobbies you like, physical activity, really important. Good nutrition, really important. Now, for caregivers and family, again, Alzheimer's Association has groups specifically for you. So if you're taking care of a loved one with Alzheimer's or any kind of dementia, talking to other families who are going through the same thing is so important. Oh, your person does that, and that's part of the disease. That's not just them being stubborn or difficult. Oh, okay. That's really important because a lot of times you think that you're really special and your person with dementia is just trying to torture you. That is not the case. That's the disease. That's not the person. And so when you hear that from other families, it's so validating and so confirming and so reassuring that this is the disease process. And especially for those who are further along in the disease process, they can prepare you for what's coming around the corner. And, the more data you have, the more prepared you can be, and the easier your life is going to be and your loved one's life is going to be. They also, um, caregiver burnout is absolutely real. So figuring out what respite options there are offered from your insurance, your long-term care insurance, or if you end up on palliative or hospice care, finding more about respite is good. Even if it's just an adult day center that lets you have 4 hours to go shopping, go cooking, do whatever, while your loved one is in a safe environment with safe people enjoying themselves, that's really, really good. And then we do have respite options where if you want to go on vacation or you just touched out. You're tired of taking care of somebody 24/7. And there are places that people can go for respite care with dementia overnight. And there are certain federal programs and state programs that are available to help you pay for that. Otherwise, it's out of pocket. But even for those who are blessed enough to afford out of pocket, that's a really good way to continue being able to take care of your loved one at home, which is the ideal situation. Stress management techniques, absolutely important. We do see a lot of senior abuse, dementia patients getting abused by caregivers because caregivers burn out and they take their anger out. So it's kind of like when we were taking care of little kids, like we become that snappy again. And that's not cool because that's actually, I mean, it's abuse. That's illegal. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to get an adult protective services case opened against you because doctors, nurses, anybody in any kind of professional field is usually a mandatory reporter and will report you and can do so anonymously and legally. And then you're going to get visitations by adult protective services. So it's better to find out how to manage your stress, how to get respite care, how to share caregiving duties with family or neighbors or your masjid family or your faith community family in order to, again, keep that person home safely for as long as possible. Anticipate your stages of grief, denial, bargaining, anger, all of that, acceptance, all of that comes. But it doesn't come at once and then go away. It kind of, and some of those steps you'll keep repeating, especially as the next stage of the dementia starts, you're going to start all over again. So that's why, again, the support groups are really, really important. And I talked about creating a care team to help you with caregiving duties, transport duties sometimes, caregiving duties, entertaining duties, because oftentimes dementia patients want to see the same face all the time. So expanding that circle of faces so that you're not the only one that they have to see all the time is really, really helpful. Um, and then this part of what's it called? I don't know how to get rid of that blue line now, so I think it's just there. Um, Part of that step for mental and emotional health is going to be to get regular therapy. This is really, really important. I know there's a huge stigma. And I'm sure Olivers are a lot more elevated in their thought processes and their education and their training to know that therapy is not a moral judgment if you need therapy, but therapy is super important. Regular therapy is really important, not a one and done, because again, dementia is dynamic. It's going to change, and there are stages that you go through, and because you're going through these stages of grief and this pattern instead of a straight line. Regular therapy is going to help you deal. It's going to be a way to manage the stress. It's going to be a way to cope with the changes that your loved one is experiencing. I put an asterisk by it in order to help you find mental health resources, i.e., therapists, if you care about Muslim only therapists, the Institute for Muslim Mental Health, Stanford Muslim Mental Health Lab, U Michigan Muslim Mental Health Consortia. Those are all going to be very, very helpful for you to find a Muslim mental health therapist if that's what you want, or a South Asian health therapist. Brown Girl Therapy on Instagram is one place you can go. And then I want to say Nisa Foundation. No, I'm saying that wrong. There's one other one in Canada, but they do Canada and the US, and I forgot their names. Again, I looked these up for you, but it's not an endorsement of one over the other, or any of these over anybody else that you find. Again, your masjid is a good place to go because a lot of times our mental health professionals are right there praying next to us. You can go to them. Most people don't want to go to somebody in their masjid because, like, oh, they're going to talk about me. It's actually illegal for them to do that. It's a HIPAA violation, so they're not going to. So please, um, it's not going to happen. That should not be the impediment to your. I apologize. I don't know what to do with this. I don't even know how to get rid of it. Um, Unless there's an eraser. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, there we go. Oh, I got it. All righty. Step 7, end of life. This is part of your toolkit because we're all going to die. Death and taxes. There's no way to prevent it. It's going to happen. It is not macabre. It is, again, if you had a beautiful life, this is a beautiful end to that beautiful life. How else? And for those of us who believe in an afterlife, this is not really the end of life. It's the end of this life and the beginning of eternal life. So, talk to your imam and then your family about your understanding of what is end of life care, what is considered aggressive, what is considered necessary for end of life care. That can differ from person to person, but go to your trusted spiritual advisor to see what is quote unquote allowed, not allowed, regarding quality of life versus aggressive treatment. Explore palliative care early Don't just wait for hospice when your loved one is literally gasping for breath because that's not useful. Guess what? On every single one of your paychecks, y'all have had Social Security taxes cut and you've had Medicare taxes cut. So you've already paid for palliative care and you've already paid for hospice. So to wait until you're literally dying in the next few hours is not the time to get the hospice benefit. The earlier you get on, even with dementia, and dementia is a hospice diagnosis, there is a point when your doctor's like, nothing else we can do. There's just symptoms escalating. We're just waiting for them to pass of something. They're getting a lot of infections. They're going to the hospital a lot. They're falling a lot. Well, the doctor might say it's time for hospice. And you're going to say, oh, they're dying? Well, the doctor probably thinks they're dying in the next 6 months, or the doctor is telling Medicare, I would not be surprised if this person died in 6 months. And that's horrible a family to hear. But again, if you're thinking about, I want data to know what I should do. This is in my toolkit now. Okay, let me activate and get ready. Let me get hospice early. How do I find good hospices? I Google it. That's why the asterisk is there. Or I can go to cms.gov. CMS is Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, and they have a hospice quality reporting department. And so they rank hospices based on, these quality measures that all hospices across the country have to have. This is federal money. So even though you might have local hospices in California, they are answering to Medicare, like certain indicators, quality indicators that they have to meet. So that's how you can research them. That's down there. Finding your local hospice providers, find a fit that is good for you, and you can ask them plenty of questions. I have a list of questions for you to ask them. Document your wishes for what do you want for artificial resuscitation, artificial feeding, artificial breathing, based on your discussions with your imam and your family and your understanding of, what is allowed, what is not allowed. And then talk openly with family about it. And for the family that has heebie-jeebies about you dying, no, no, don't say that. Astaghfirullah, if you say it, it will happen. No, it won't. If God says it, it'll happen. But if I don't have these discussions, it's like we tie our belt and we get to work. We tie our camel and we get to work. It's like this is not a bad thing. Muslims of anybody arguably should be the most prepared for death. And I am persistently shocked by how ill prepared they are. So talk very openly about it with everybody. Let's see. Ooh. I gotta get rid of this and go to the next one. Talk faster. These are your questions to ask your masjid and hospices that you are interviewing. How often do you visit patients? Which team members visit? What's the schedule? How do I get my medicines that you're ordering? Which medicines do you pay for? What equipment do you pay for? How do I recognize pain? What do I do with morphine? When do I give it? What are some medicines I need to stay comfortable, but active? Or just comfortable because sometimes that's all you can do. Who do my loved ones call for help? Who will support my family after I'm gone? And then even more questions to now ask my family and the masjid. Who does my family call after I die? Who knows how to prepare my body immediately post-mortem, and that's, getting the body ready for pickup, closing the mouth, covering, facing the qibla, doing all of those things that we want to do right upon dying. Where do I get a shroud for people who are Muslims or people of other faith communities that use a shroud? Where do I get a shroud from? Which mortuary is picking me up? Do I have to be taken immediately there? Can I stay at home? Who's signing my death certificate? When are they signing it? Can I purchase a burial plot or do I have to wait? Is there a Muslim cemetery? Is there a Hindu cemetery? Is there a Baha'i cemetery? Any kind of cemetery that's special to me? Is there a plot for me there? And then who's going to wash me or prepare my body for burial? So dementia is a life-changing diagnosis that we cannot control. There's nothing we can do to change it other than medications and treatments, and even those have a limit because human beings are limited. But by knowing certain things that are coming or happening and stocking our toolkit, we have some control over this devastating diagnosis. I'm going to say life-changing diagnosis instead of devastating. Not going to use that word anymore. Just act early because we're scared and we don't want to do anything and we want to freeze and pretend like it's not happening. But act early to reduce that fear and handle and cope with that grief. That will bring the peace and the acceptance and the beautiful ending to your beautiful lives. Key takeaways: clear medical roadmaps will help us prepare practically, give us some control back. Dementia care is long and expensive. Early planning, late crises or no crises is the ideal situation. Legal planning, again, gives you back control, gives you back dignity, and it will keep your family from fighting after you die or while you're sick. And maybe you're locked in your body and you can't communicate anymore and you can't stop the kids from fighting. But I've seen so many people stop talking, siblings, for 20 years because mom or dad died in a situation where the kids didn't know what to do. So they just fought about it all the time. Plan early while you can because there will be a time when it will not be a choice. So don't let it come to the point where you lose your choices. Exercise your choices while you have them and build that toolkit and get ready. That's it. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing and only have a few minutes left for questions. I'm sorry, this was longer than I thought it was.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uzma. Any questions that you guys have for her?
Yeah, I have, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Okay, you kept saying talk to your imam at the masjid, but most of the imams, they're not trained in that. They have no idea about it. So, how do we go about that? Maybe give training to the imams first?
That's a good idea. More and more imams are getting educated in mental health and social work. So it doesn't have to be your local imam. I mean, California is big, or Orange County is big and diverse, and you have a lot of resources over there, more than one imam for sure. And there's got to be at least one in Orange County alone that can at least direct you to good conversations about this. All imams will have information about end of life. They may not know about financial and legal stuff, but the imam you really need because the problem that a lot of Muslims in particular have is, oh, like taking the feeding tube out is haram, or, not putting in a feeding tube is haram, or not giving IV fluids is haram, haram, haram. And people love it, but they have absolutely no qualification to do it. That's why I'm saying go to the imam. The imam knows about this stuff. And if they don't, they will refer you to the proper resources. You can also go to Yaqeen Institute for Omar Suleiman's articles on end of life care.
I have a question.
Mhm.
If you have a living trust, do you still need a medical power of attorney?
If you have a living will,
Trust,
that
trust, family trust.
so the trust is going to be about financial stuff. It's not going to be medical stuff.
Oh, so we
So you
still
still
need a
need a medical,
medical.
yeah.
And where do
Otherwise,
we
your
get that?
state from your state Department of Health, I don't know, so your state attorney general's office, you will get the forms for how to assign a medical power of attorney. And if you don't assign it, your state will assign somebody who's next of kin. And next of kin in some states is a spouse, next of kin is a child in some states. And
They
if
will
you,
let us know what forms we need and
yeah, you'll
who
just
to assign.
search on the state attorney general's office medical power of attorney forms.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question. First, thank you.
Yes.
Great session.
Thank you.
But would like not only a copy of the presentation in terms of sheets, but actual recording, because you mentioned so many important stuff which we like to capture later on. And
Hmm.
also at the same time, this is my first session, and I like to get access to the two sessions which you talked about, which I
Oh, yeah.
missed.
Yes, we will
So
have a copy of the recording sent, and we also do have a YouTube, so then that this recording will also be uploaded on there as well. If you are unable to access the recording for any reason, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. You're more than welcome to reach out to any member of Olive, and we'll go ahead and get that to you.
thank you.
So there's a question here, difference between POLST and living will. POLST. I don't know that acronym.
That comes from a doctor's office, and I just recently learned about it, but I have been dealing with so much issues. My husband is in early stages of Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
so I haven't been able to follow up on it, but our masjid had a session last year and I wasn't paying attention. My husband's illness just creeped up on us. We weren't
Um,
So
so
it does
I
say that
believe that this PLOS, you have to go through a doctor's office.
Um, you don't, but it's a good idea to talk to your primary care physician because the POLST is very specific life-sustaining treatments to the point of IVs, yes or no, antibiotics, yes or no, this, yes or no, this, yes or no. So I'm also family physician trained, right? So as a family physician, I delivered babies. And when people came to deliver babies with me, they would have something called a birth plan. So if this happens, then I want you to do this. If that happens, then I want you to do this. If this happens, da, 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 da. And they're really trying to control the birth process. And anybody who did that always ended up with a C-section and the worst outcomes. I had one woman give me a 6-page one, and I was like, you know, you're going to end up with a C-section because you just challenged God, girl. So I feel like the more specific you try to get, you are trying to control every little thing, and you have not done step one. You have not given up control. And you do have to give up control in order to get it back. And it will come to you. So I am against the pulsed. I am for a living will, which gives you a general idea of what I want to stay comfortable, what I want done and not done. But if I'm not ready to give up control, I'm not going to do either of those things. So, polls are for those people who I think don't believe in a higher power and they think that they have some semblance of control over every little thing. I can't tell you when they're like, oh, well, I want to be intubated, but only if you can't take me off or something. They'll say like, oh, like give me a breathing tube, but only if you think I can get off. I'm like, I don't know that. How the hell do I know that? Like, I'm not God. Like, I can't tell you if you'll be able to get off or not. So you need to decide, do you want it or not? Because I'm really good at putting it in, but I don't know if you'll be able to live off of it or not. Like I don't have that crystal ball. That is not how I practice my religion. That's not how I practice my life. And that is not the practice of medicine. So people need to give up control before they can have either of those things, a living will or this life-sustaining treatment, very specific thing. Thank you. Physician orders for life-sustaining treatment.
We can take one more question. Go ahead, Nisha.
If I have the medical, the advance directive,
Mhm.
so that considered as the medical will, or is it something different?
Usually, if your advanced directives are written and notarized, you've already assigned a medical power of attorney in there. That's part and parcel of it. Have you gone to a lawyer with it and gotten it notarized?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, then that usually designates somebody in there. And if it doesn't, then you need to take that back to your lawyer or get a refund from him or some kind of a rebate
Okay.
because he did not complete his work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm
Thank you
sorry,
so
if there
much.
were any
It
more
was
questions, please send them on to Olive and they'll forward to me and I'm happy to email them back. I know this was really comprehensive, but if you have any questions, like they'll know you feel free to give out my email address and you guys can send them to me.
Thank you so much, Uzma. And then
thank you
again,
so much.
You're very
any more
welcome.
questions, let us know, and we'll go ahead and connect you guys. Thank you so much all for joining, and thank you again, Uzma. Always an invigorating and informative presentations. We do really, really appreciate it.
Not
And
at
then
all,
we'll
my
go ahead
pleasure.
and end today's session. And then we'll see you all soon.
Olive Community Services is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Southern California that provides culturally appropriate services to seniors, their family, and the community. Through its physical and virtual interactive programs, Olive engages participants in a variety of ways that promotes health and well-being. To learn more about Olive Community Services, to get involved, or to make a donation, please visit www.olivecs.org or email info@olivecs.org. Be a change maker, and together, let's live, learn, and thrive.